Welcome to Alberta Conservation Association's Harvest Your Own podcast, the resource for everything hunting, navigating through the field, the butcher shop, and the kitchen. Life is all about great food. Let's get started.
Welcome to the podcast. I'm your host, Brad Fenson, an avid outdoor enthusiast who has worked as a freelance journalist, photographer, and public speaker for over 3 decades. I have hunted, fished, and foraged all my life and hope to share my passion for the outdoors. Along the way, I want to encourage everyone to harvest wild proteins and enjoy the satisfaction of providing the next meal for your family. Our goal is to educate, entertain, and inspire individuals to get outdoors and create a connection between food, health, and your future meals. Welcome to Harvest Your Own. Today we have a gentleman that's quite active on social media, which gave us a little glimpse into his passions and what he loves in the outdoors. Stephen Altman, welcome to Harvest Your Own.
Thanks for having me, Brad. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, as I mentioned, it's interesting with social media these days. It's easy to get a glimpse into somebody's life by looking at their page and seeing what really inspires them. And it looks like the outdoors are your playground.
Yeah, I would say the outdoors has been very impactful for me. As a kid, I grew up in a rural setting in southern Alberta, so I got to see a lot of wildlife growing up. And we spent a lot of time in the Rocky Mountains as a kid on horseback and camping. So as I became an adult, it just was one of those things that you kind of get infatuated with, especially when you have a lot of time away from nature. You kind of want to get back to it as fast as you can.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like I grew up in a hunting family, so I've always, and people don't always understand this, but I love wildlife and nature, and probably got an appreciation for it at an early age because of it was also our meals. But lots of people just love the outdoors, nature, wildlife, and it's a drawing card to get you back out there. It makes you aware of what's going on around you, just identifying the different species. I'm sure you saw lots growing up as a kid.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. And I didn't really come from a big hunting family at all. So for me to be involved with just nature and working cattle and helping out with our neighbors and seeing migratory birds come through our property and just seeing wildlife when you go to the mountains or around your local area was one of those things that every time you saw it, you just got drawn into it. You're like, this is such a cool experience. You're just watching something and observing. And it's just mind-blowing sometimes how close you can actually get to animals without disturbing them. And so it becomes this thing that every time you go outside or you're going to the mountains, you're like, I hope I see this again, or I hope I see that again, because it's just a very memorable experience. So I know with my parents growing up, that was a big thing, is like having a respect for nature, taking care of the land around us. And like, when you do see wildlife, obviously don't get too close and just let them do their thing and just appreciate the opportunities you're having.
Yeah, it sounds like a great way to grow up. I've seen, I'm sure I'm not exaggerating when I say millions of ducks and geese, but I still get excited when they come over, and I still have to look up and stop whatever I'm doing and just enjoy that moment where, a pair of honkers drifts over the top as they talk to each other and disappear over the trees, or mallards that are jumping up off a slough. It never gets old to me.
No, and I would agree with that big time too, because in my line of work, I work with a lot of youth in and around the city of Edmonton, so they don't get exposed to a lot of animals. And the nice part is just being able to take them outside the city, going to Devon or little areas around, and taking them fishing or just being out for a little hike in some of the parks. And they'll stop and they'll be like, oh, there's a crow in the tree, or there's a mallard on the water. And they get excited about it too. But it's the same for me, as I get just as excited to see any living creature wandering through. And you're like, this isn't an experience you're always going to get. Like, I know in Edmonton, some of the stock trout ponds they'll get pelicans that fly in. And not a lot of other kids that I work with have ever seen a pelican. So they're sitting there going, oh my goodness, like, look at this bird. And they're trying to figure out what it is. And it's that excitement of just seeing wildlife all the time and understanding how closely they're related to you just makes such a cool experience and such a nice difference for a lot of people.
Yeah, it's hard for me to even comprehend that, not seeing or appreciating wildlife. But if you're working with kids from the inner city that have never been out, it's almost like their eyes have been opened for the first time. It's got to be quite life-altering.
Yeah, and for a lot of them, what I find is they're very hesitant the first time you're going out. Like, I don't really want to be outside. Nature is scary. nature is this, walking this distance is really difficult. So there's a lot of different components because of the view that they have of nature as something that's powerful and to be feared changes when you go out and you're just going for a walk down a trail and you're, enjoying the scenery. You're not talking too much because you're just kind of taking it in. And all of a sudden you'll just see a deer walk by or you're seeing a coyote far away. And that is very impactful for them as when they see that and you're having that conversation with the animal is, it's like, let's just be quiet and observe for a little bit. And they just get to watch this animal do its thing. It completely alters them. So I find with a lot of the kids that I work with now, like they're really big. They're into fishing or just being outside, which has been great to see. And they don't have that fear of nature anymore, which I think is really important.
Yeah, I think any time outside is good medicine for people too. We discussed this a little bit earlier, but people if you're stressed or having a bad time, can't deal with things, the best thing to do is take a deep breath and step outside. It really is, brings you back to where we should be. Just enjoy Mother Earth and what's out here and take a moment to just soak it in and enjoy it. And a lot of times the problems just go away.
Yeah, I agree with you on that one. And it's a big part of some of the research I'm doing with my master's of psychology currently in my studies is looking at nature therapy and how that stuff can actually impact people and how it can change people when you're feeling down and a little bit out and are having a bad day. Being outside can drastically change the way you view the world and how you feel. And we talked about it a little bit earlier, but even just going outside in your own backyard and noticing the changes, the plants are growing, the grass is growing, you're seeing different birds, you're just seeing different things, and it's great for your brain. Your brain loves to see those novel pieces. And so anytime you can be outside, whether it's a different park or going to a different trailhead, your brain loves that, and it just boosts your mood and puts you back into a state of gratitude and appreciation for things.
Yeah, that outdoor therapy is really medicine. And, a lot of us don't look at it the same way you do in terms of the psychology of it and in terms of what it does for your brain. But I know that it certainly changes my outlook on a day just by going outside and seeing a moose cut through the yard or seeing birds fly overhead or whatever it is. It's always special. It never gets old.
Yeah, and I agree with you. And some of the best experiences I've had in the outdoors is just being on a trail and you're out there and it's quiet and you're getting away from like the noise of a city because I currently live in one, and it's very peaceful. You find that when you take away all that extra noise from your day-to-day life, whether it's work or school, it just gives you the time to kind of sit with yourself and really be in tune with everything that's around you. You notice the smells, you hear the birds, you get to see wildlife if they do cross your path, and you really feel like you're a part of something.
Well, I think your research that you're doing is amazing. I think that the effects of the outdoors and the psychology of it could be a breakthrough for our future, because most people that I know that have learned to embrace the outdoors as they're older in life it's been a life-changing thing for them. So,
yeah.
You didn't grow up in a hunting family, I don't believe. There wasn't a lot of influence, but you've certainly embraced it as an adult.
Yeah, there wasn't a lot of hunting influence because as a kid, I spent a lot of time playing hockey, and so that was kind of the focus. Honestly, until I was in my late 20s, was preparing for the next season. So you're in the gym, you're on the ice, you're doing all the stuff, you're traveling to go play in a different country or at a university by the time the mid-August rolls around. So hunting was kind of a thing I knew about. I had a bunch of friends, like my good friend Gerard that I hunt with currently, that kind of got me out into it as I got older. So once I stepped away from playing hockey and was looking for something different to do, that was kind of the avenue. I was like, okay, well, I love being outside. I love being able to kind of do things on my own and kind of provide more for myself. What's an avenue I could do? And oddly enough, my mom doesn't hunt all the time, but she got into hunting much later in life as well. And she was kind of the one that said, hey, I think you might like this archery thing. It's a little bit challenging. You have to really think about what you're doing. Why don't you check it out? And that was kind of my introduction to archery. And then through my friend Gerard, he noticed that I was getting better with my shooting after a year or so and invited me out to go hunt with him. So in my family, there wasn't really any influence with hunting, but there wasn't always that appreciation of being outside and kind of doing things for yourself.
Now, that's a pretty cool story. Did you grow up eating any wild game? Did you ever have neighbors or family or friends provide stuff where you could at least taste it and get an appreciation for it?
Yeah, so we always used to have family friends that were from central and northern Alberta that would bring like moose down or bring some different types of wild game down. So I always had a little bit of a taste for it occasionally, and it was always meat that I really, really enjoyed. So once I got a little bit older, I'm like, hey, like hunting is an option. Like I can go harvest my own food and put that in the freezer and make my own meals from it. It became more exciting, right? Because it's not just the appreciation of being in nature, but now you get to be connected to everything that's in your house and what you're feeding your family and friends. So I had a little bit of an introduction growing up, but it was nice to get back to it as an adult and then be reintroduced to it through my buddy's family.
Yeah, and it's interesting. When I grew up, archery was just starting to get popular. So most of the people I knew started off with a firearm, but lots of people are starting off with a bow these days. It's a lot easier to buy a bow, become proficient. You don't need to take special courses. You don't need licenses to buy them. And they're just plain fun to shoot all year round.
Yeah, that's probably the biggest thing is when my mom was like, hey, Strathmore's got an archery range. Let's test you out here, see if you like it, and then look at probably getting a bow eventually. I went there. I loved shooting it. And I was like, okay, I'm in love with this. And I hadn't felt that passionate about something outside of playing hockey. So for me to latch onto something I was that passionate about was huge. And it became this thing of it's easy to get into it, but it takes time to develop skills at it. So every day you're wanting to shoot, you're like, I can't wait to get off work or finish school and go shoot my bow for a little bit, even at 10 and 20 yards. But it became such a passion for me. I started looking up YouTube videos and chatting with my buddy Gerard constantly about archery. I'm like, what happens if we like hold our hands like this, or we do this, or like, what happens if I adjust something on my bow or the weight of my arrow? I got really nerdy about it. And so there's old videos that I have up on Instagram, but of me shooting in my apartment because I just love to shoot my bow. I got a really high end quality target. And it was every day I'm shooting arrows in my apartment, making sure like there's no deviation and that you're really dialed in. And then I ended up finding some other places to go shoot, but it just became one of those passions. Like if I'm not doing it every day, I felt totally lost. It was almost like a form of meditation in a way.
I'm glad to hear you say that because I believe it strongly is. Like archery is highly addictive. It takes a lot of skill, but it pulls you out from behind the television, puts you front and center with equipment and outdoors and targets and friends and it's good exercise too. You utilize a lot more muscles than what people realize when you're shooting a bow.
This podcast is produced for Harvest Your Own, a program dedicated to those who want to reconnect with food and health through their experiences outdoors. HarvestYourOwn.ca is a resource for individuals to learn more about hunting and the outdoors. There's information to get you started and ensure that your compass stays pointed in the right direction to be successful. Where's your next meal coming from?
Oh yeah, and I remember probably the first time going out hunting when I got invited out and I had to do my first initial stalk. And I was green as green could be, and I had no idea really what I was doing. So they were all giving me pointers. And I just remember getting up to the deer. It was a muley deer bedded down in a field. And I was absolutely exhausted. It was probably 450 yards away, but I didn't understand how deer kind of think, and I didn't really understand the layout of the landscape and how that all kind of plays together. So I end up belly crawling out for quite a long ways. And by the time I even get there, I'm just exhausted and I'm trying to draw back my bow and I'm like, I got nothing in me. And so you kind of realize in that moment you can get very close to animals and there's smarter ways to do things, but you also have to be at least physically adept about going out to do these type of things. So if you're trying to hunt with a bow, the option to not be physically active isn't really there. And that was kind of the one thing I learned hunting for the first time was, oh man, like I need to kind of get my cardio up a little bit so I can withstand like a slow stalk in. I need to be able to do a couple more push-ups than what I'm doing so I'm not physically fatigued to draw my bow. And so that's kind of led into being more fitness oriented with like running and lifting weights and getting into kettlebells and doing different activities just to stay in shape and to be ready for those opportunities.
Absolutely. I think that getting into archery is the catalyst for wanting to get in shape and enjoy more and figure out the wildlife and how to get close to them and still be able to draw your bow. Deep down we all want to be successful, but every encounter is unique, and it's rewarding even when we don't get something, because we can learn from it.
Yeah, and that was the biggest thing I found, like my first year hunting, was the ability to get so close to animals. And I'll never forget it. It's absolutely seared in my brain. But the first deer that I got close to, and I'm probably, I would say 7 yards away, if I remember correctly, it was under 10. And I was just so nervous seeing this deer because I crawled through the bank. I belly crawled all the way up to it. And I'm sitting on the bank of this little ledge here in the bushes. And I go to draw back and I'm just shaking so much. The adrenaline is going. I'm exhausted. I let an arrow go and I just hit the tree behind it and it blows up the arrow. Deer still can't see that I'm there, but I'm seeing it stomp around. I'm seeing this behavior I've never seen before. And I'm wondering, like, is this thing going to take me out? Is it going to run away? I don't know what to do. So I knock another arrow. And by the time I could even process what was going on, it had stomped back and forth a few times, didn't like what was going on, and left.
Yeah.
But I just sat there and I was like, that was the coolest thing I have ever seen in my entire life. And I just took a big breath afterwards and was just sitting there in awe of this animal that I had managed to get so close to. And I don't think without getting into archery or even hunting that you ever really get that close to nature. And to see it breathe and to smell it and to hear it is just such an exhilarating experience that it's hard to put to words.
It is. Those close encounters are, they're unique, but they're also, you want more of them afterwards. After you experience it a few times, that's what you live for. You want to just get back out there and have another encounter with something up close and personal and learn something more about them, see their behavior, and have that interaction with wildlife.
Yeah, and it turns into this lifelong pursuit about learning about their nature, learning about their anatomy, mindset, because if you're hunting mule deer, elk, or white-tailed deer, and especially in Alberta, the various areas we have, like sometimes those patterns change and what sets them off might not set off a different type of herd depending on the area you're in. So you just get enamored with the beauty of this animal, but also that if you are able to harvest, that you also have food in the freezer and you can share with family and friends. So it just becomes this cool experience of how close can I get to this animal every single time? How many can I spot when I'm going out? How many can I find when I'm out hiking and searching and looking for all this stuff? And you start to get more invested in the whole process of it, looking at maps, trying to be ready physically for the hunting season, going out and scouting in the summer months and spring months to figure out, are there animals that are frequent in this area? Because you just want those experiences over and over again.
No, I think you've caught the bug by the sounds of it. What was the first thing you actually harvested?
So the first thing I ever harvested, I was two grouse my first year. So when I was out all alone my first year, it was very late season and it was about minus 25, but I was very determined to get a white-tailed deer because I finally spotted one. And so I went out hunting and ended up harvesting my two grouse. So that was my first year. But the first deer, big game animal, was a mule deer that I harvested with a rifle. And then this last year was with the bow. So it was very exciting to kind of see the incremental pieces as more experience comes into play.
Oh, absolutely. It's you're continually growing as a hunter from the time you start till who knows when it actually finishes. But I noticed on your Instagram page that you also got your mom out hunting.
Yeah, and that's what we kind of talked about a little bit earlier, is my mom got me into archery because she thought it was the coolest thing ever. And so this bug is kind of fed to my mom as well. She's like, I really want the experiences of being in nature and being with you and seeing what you see. Because every time I finish a hunt, whether it was successful, I mean, they're all successful if you're seeing animals and you're spending time in nature. But even if we didn't harvest, she's like, I really want that experience. So my mom's a little bit older, and so mobility is a little bit of a different issue. So I went and scouted some areas with my friends, and we brought her out, and she was beyond excited and nervous, and you could see all the emotions were going through her. And so it ended up being a 2-day hunt for her, but she came out and experienced it, and she's like, I didn't realize we could get that close to animals. And I'm like, isn't it cool to see the deer? And she's like, it's amazing. They're just like feeding and grazing and moving. And so with her, a lot of it was when you're comfortable, because she hunts with a rifle, is when you're comfortable and you feel like you got a good bead, let it go. And so the first day was all nerves and just being that close to animals, threw it off. So the second day we went out early in the morning, and as soon as legal light hit, she found the deer that she wanted to harvest, and it was perfect shot. And you could just see all the emotion go through her. She was a little bit shaky and excited, and she's like, I can't believe I just did that. And I'm like, you did such a great job. It was a perfect shot. I walked her through it, and it was just like reminding her, breathe, take your time, squeeze the trigger. And when she was ready, she managed to follow through. So it's fun to get her out to do it, even if it's only during November for rifle season, but she gets the same experiences now that I do. And so it's fun to see it kind of go into the family a little bit more, where my mom is excited to get ready for hunting season, to prepare, to sight in her rifle, to do all that type of stuff. And for her, it's been a big catalyst to even stay in shape longer, which is going to benefit her as she gets older too.
Absolutely. And it sounds like things have come full circle. She got you started in archery, sort of planted the seed. And I don't know if her original intent was to have you take her out hunting in November, but there's obviously benefits for both of you. Yeah.
And it's been a big benefit for both of us. And the original intent, I tried to get her to go spring bear hunting with me my second year hunting, because that's still on my list, as I'd like to go bear hunting. And she was very nervous, but she didn't let me know why she didn't want to go. So we ended up getting really bad weather. We couldn't go anyway. Spring snowfalls hit in the mountains, and sometimes you just got to pull out. But this time around, she's like, I do want to try and harvest a deer. She was very honest about the whole thing. She's like, when it comes time to it, I don't know if I can actually pull the trigger, but I want to be able to see if this is something I want to do. And then this year she capitalized on it, and she got the bug immediately as well. And she's like, this is what I want to do for my meat and my food until I can't do it anymore. So
wow.
That's been kind of the cool thing, is seeing her get that bug as well.
Yeah, that's very profound too. You know, there's an interesting message in there. You said that you had her out the first day, but she was too shaky, her nerves are bugging her, she didn't shoot. I think that's really important, because a lot of mentors, you got to look at the person you have out there and let them make their own decisions. You know, what deer is it they want to shoot? It's not your deer, it's theirs. So let them pick the situation, let them pick the animal, let them pick the time when they want to shoot, and they will be more successful, because they need to process things in their brain, put it together, and have the right situation and have everything feel right in order to do it. So it's interesting that you went through that, and that there were nerves and jitters, and you just put it off for a day, and then it happened.
Exactly. And I remember we got back to camp later that night, and my buddy Gerard was out with us too, so he was awesome about it. But we sat around just playing crib, and we just had a conversation like, how'd you feel being in that situation? What were you thinking? What was going on? And it was very insightful from my mom when she let us know. She's like, it's not that I don't think I can do it. She's like, I'm just worried about making a bad shot.
Right.
And so we talked about that. I'm like, you've gone to the rifle range. You have your rifle sighted in. You know you can shoot. She's a very good shot because she spends her time doing that, but she'd never shot on anything that was live. So when that opportunity came up, she started having a little bit of self-doubt. And I'm like, what would help you? And one of the things that she brought up was like, talk me through everything so I don't have to think about it and I can do the rest. So that second date, having that other opportunity of, hey, make sure you're on target, take a deep breath, safety's off, when you're ready, squeeze. And just letting her take over from there was amazing to watch as well. And so it's cool too when you have hunting partners and you can kind of talk to each other, especially my mom being a first-year hunter, and you have that engagement of like, what can I do to support you? And what is going through your brain that might be a limiting factor or that might be throwing you off and making you a little bit more nervous?
This podcast was made possible by Alberta Conservation Association and the Harvest Your Own community. If you're interested in harvesting your own food, there's a comprehensive collection of information to gain insight and knowledge. Head to the field, harvest your own protein, prepare it, and taste the results. HarvestYourOwn.ca is a library of information from getting started and geared up to processing, butchering, and cooking wild game to make the connection between health and food.
Yeah, I'll give you some credit here because I think that your psychology background helps a lot in a circumstance like this. You can actually read things and see things, and being able to walk somebody through it, have them talk it through, and then know that they can do it, and then be that support the next day in terms of talking them through. You've got this. You know the target. You know you can shoot. Take a deep breath. That's all very important for first-time hunters, and those are great steps to take. And like I said, let them do it at their own pace. I think that was the best thing you could do for your mom or for anyone that's a first-time hunter is let it be their experience, not yours.
Yeah, because as soon as you try and force it, you're like what you want as an outcome for them, as exciting as it is for a harvest, there's a lot of times where we know it's not an ethical shot, or like you're not steady enough to make a shot, or there's just other circumstances around that might be, hey, we got to let this one go.
Yeah.
And sometimes I know it's in the hunting world, and you can see it on Instagram and stuff like that, but some people get too focused on the outcome of it instead of like the whole journey of like, hey, we hiked out here, we're seeing animals, we're enjoying our time, let's get you comfortable and in a position to shoot, let's get you comfortable with what this is going to feel like. Then there's just so many pieces, right? So I know for myself, going through that first year of a lot of trial and error and figuring stuff out and having some support, there's many, many times where I would draw back on a deer and let down, and I'm like, couldn't do it. And that's okay. Yeah. And it's just a process. You got to get comfortable with seeing a lot of different situations to get comfortable with it.
And you have to have those experiences because you do learn from every one of them. The more you do it, the more knowledge you gain in terms of when you need to draw your bow or be ready or wait for the shot or anticipate something that the animal's going to do. So experience is a great teacher, and the more time you spend out there, the better you get at it.
Yeah, and that's the only way you can get it is just going through that process over and over and over again. Shooting at targets helps to hone skills in and to focus on different parts, but there's nothing like seeing wildlife and experiencing what they're actually going to do. Yeah. And you just can't trade that in outside of going out and doing it for yourself.
Right. Do you guys process your own game?
I've started processing my own game this year. My buddy Gerard and I usually will do a little bit of processing at his house just because he's got more of a setup. And then I usually help out with their family once the season's fully done and everybody's finished and bringing everything in. But I've started doing it at the home. Finally got a vacuum seal and a grinder. So that's made a big difference of being able to process more on my own. And so for my muley buck this year, I processed it all at home myself this year.
I think it really brings things full circle. For me, I really enjoy the hunt, but I get the most satisfaction from closing my freezer door on everything that's been handled properly, trimmed properly, fully utilized. That is where our family gets great satisfaction. And I say family because I call it game night at the Fensons. My girls, my wife, everyone participates, and we put up the food that we're going to eat for the rest of the year, and it feels good when you're done. Yeah,
and it's such a cool experience to know that, hey, I got this in the field, and I've taken care of all of it when I was in the field, and now I've got it home, and I'm able to take care of it again. And it's just such a deep connection with the food that you're having. And so I know every time that me and my girlfriend will have some wild game, or I'll make a stew or something like that, that it just becomes this thing of great appreciation. And then you kind of have a little bit of a flashback to where you were when it happened, the whole situation, the excitement, all of this different pieces for it. But you really start having that deep connection with nature, right? As you said, it comes full circle from all the work that you put in prior to hunting season, and now you can enjoy this beautiful gift all the way in the off season. And so it's a very cool process to learn how to butcher and how to take care of all the meat. And it's an art form. And my mind is always blown by the guys and the girls who are excellent at doing it. And so I love watching YouTube videos and Instagram videos and all that stuff that gets posted online of like how to take care of your meat, how to do all these different types of cuts. And it's just fascinating for me to see how good so many people are getting at this. And the fact that we can use the internet now to find these resources and learn from other people.
Yeah, true. I mean, Harvest Your Own has been around now for a number of years, but get an incredible number of people coming on there to learn the basics, to look up information, whether it's archery or wing shooting or shotguns or bows, and videos how to process game or how to field dress them, how to clean a duck or a goose, everything. That resource is out there for people that want to get started and don't really know where to get started. There's definitely a lot of information for them.
Yeah, and the nice part too is like with Harvest Your Own, that was one of the things with field dressing. I know that for me, the first time ever you're out there, you're like, okay, I've never field dressed an animal ever in my life. And now you're kind of confronted with this opportunity to do it, but it's very intimidating at the same time. You want to make sure you're following all the legal pieces. You want to make sure you're not spoiling any of the meat, that you're doing all the right things. I was very lucky that my buddy Gerard, I got to watch him harvest different animals. So the first time he showed me how to do it, and the next time he's like, hey, you're going to help me harvest and field dress this animal. And then when it came to my turn this last year of my muley buck, I had a hand in the field from one of my other buddies, Robin, but I was more competent to do what I needed to do than just sitting there going like, I have a knife and I have no idea what I'm supposed to be doing.
Yes. The cool thing about modern times is you can open your phone, look up a website, and get a tutorial as you're standing there with the animal trying to deal with it. So, our grandfathers and forefathers and people that came before us never had that. They would need a mentor, or they would have to just dive in with both feet. But it's pretty interesting to see the resources that we have and have them readily available at our fingertips when we need them.
Yeah, exactly. And there's nothing that beats in-person interactions like that still, like our forefathers and our ancestors, having someone kind of take them by the hand a little bit and teach them. But at the same time, it's a beautiful ability to have the internet at your fingertips, or to download a video and keep it. And you go, oh yeah, okay, this is the next step I need to do, or this is the method I need to use because the animal is here. So I can't use X, Y, and Z, but I can do this instead. And just to have different options and to be able to do it and know that you're taking care of that animal from start to finish it breathes a big sigh of relief in myself knowing that. But at the same time, I just find there's such a big appreciation for how many resources are out there. And sometimes I feel like even if we're very experienced, it's never a bad thing to go back and take a look and be like, okay, yeah, I remember this, I remember that. Okay, this is the part that I've been forgetting, or I forgot in this moment and that I need to brush up on. So it's nice to have it at our fingertips as well.
Absolutely. A refresher course never hurts anyone. So
exactly.
What advice would you have for other first-time hunters? It sounds like you're part of this whole movement about knowing where your food comes from, wanting to relate to the land, which is the right reasons to do all this. But what about other people that are still timid about getting out there, enjoying nature, or even starting hunting, but they're playing with it but not sure what to do? Any advice for them?
I would say if you're a first-time hunter and you're really nervous about going out, especially by yourself, because that's very intimidating, I would see if you can, like at your local archery range, wherever you're at, or if you're at a gun range, try and find the people that hunt, and don't be afraid to ask questions, because I've been doing that quite consistently at my range and just chit-chatting with people. Check your friend group and maybe your extended friend groups too, and you'd be surprised how many people hunt and fish and do different things. And don't be afraid to ask if you can join along. And sometimes it's going to be a no, but even with that, there's just so many different resources that you have in your local archery range or gun range that somebody is more than willing to always take you along. And I know there's other resources that you can sign up for programs. Alberta Conservation does some pheasant shoots I've seen recently, and there's some stuff depending on what region of the province you're in. They have new hunter programs. So those are always great places to use, and don't be afraid to use Google as well and try and find different things, because there's a lot of Facebook pages and Instagram pages as well that offer lots of resources for new hunters. But the biggest thing I would say is don't be afraid to just go out too. Even if you're out shed hunting in the spring, go find public land, get used to being out there and walking around and exploring. And that's one way to start building more comfort out there as well.
Absolutely. The hunting and fishing community is very open to sharing information, helping people out. I don't know what it is. Maybe you can understand it or describe it more with the psychology, but it's something that you want to share with people. You want other people to experience what you are. So, if you've got any inkling to get out there, the community is very open, and it's not hard to find mentors. And if you go to Harvest Your Own or the Alberta Hunter Education Instructors Association, there are mentor programs where you can actually get out and get some help if you don't have anybody else to take you. So great resources in Alberta. You just have to want to go do it.
Yeah, you have to be unafraid to go out and just try. And there's nothing wrong, just like my mom and me the first time going out, there's nothing wrong with just going out and not pulling the trigger, just to get those experiences and to be close to animals and meeting new people. I think sometimes as a new hunter, it feels really intimidating meeting people that have been doing it for 20, 30 years and have all this knowledge. And you're like, oh, I don't want to look like a dummy, or I don't want to mess up, or I don't want to do this. And at the end of the day, you're not going to get the full experiences, or if you're so worried about what everyone else is thinking or all of that, because it's just a little bit of insecurity. And we love to share. Like, the hunting community I have found is beautiful when it comes to sharing resources and sharing like public land areas where it's great to go, like, hey, go check this place out. I saw elk moving through here. They may or may not be there anymore, but go check it out. It's about here. And they'll give you like rough areas to check out. And some of them too, they'll be like, hey, why don't you come join me on a hunt, or come join me here. We'll be at this person's property. And so that's one of the biggest things is if you're a new hunter, it's okay to be a little bit uncomfortable and a little bit afraid, but go out and do it and talk to people and enjoy the experience.
Absolutely. I have a feeling we could probably do another whole episode just on the psychology of hunting and looking at first-timers and people that are interested in getting out there and this whole movement. Like, we're lucky in Alberta, we have more hunter recruitment than anywhere else in North America. So there's a real push for people to get out there and enjoy it, and they're finding satisfaction in life. So those are the right reasons to go. And I think that, there's lots of room for more hunters in Alberta. We're spoiled in terms of our resources of what we have for the current number of hunters. And I go to places in the States, Pennsylvania, for instance, over 1 million deer hunters in the field on opening day. We can't even fathom that. So we are spoiled here, lots of opportunity, lots of room to grow. And I would just encourage anyone that has an interest in it to find a mentor, or even scroll through your Instagram page and find out who might have some common interests.
Exactly. It's a great place to start. And I agree with you. We're super spoiled in Alberta. And that's the thing, is if you're interested even in deer hunting or elk hunting or moose hunting, it could even be pheasant hunting. There's tons of places you can go. It doesn't have to be always archery going after elk. I know that's a big thing in the U.S. with all the pages that are up, but whatever animal you're interested in, there's somebody in Alberta who's knowledgeable and willing to take you on and mentor you.
Absolutely. I do have one last question for you. I'd like to ask this question because to me it's the best part of the hunt. What is your favorite wild game dish or recipe?
Ooh, my favorite wild game dish, not my recipe, my buddy Gerard, for Christmas time when we went down to visit him and his family, he made elk Wellington, and my goodness, that was one of the best meals we've ever had. I'm going to have to try and steal that recipe once he perfects it, but elk Wellington was absolutely amazing and such a great gift. And I know that he spent a lot of time trying to figure out how to put it all together and making everything from scratch, because he's quite a large cook and really enjoys that aspect of it. So he's kind of my reference for cooking at this point after he tests out his recipes.
Nice. Yeah, Wellington takes a little bit of finesse. You got to know how to do pastry and not overcook the meat and all the rest of it. But it does make an incredible dish, and having it made with wild game, I think, is the best.
Yeah, I would fully agree. Definitely a treat.
Yes. Well, thank you for sharing your experiences with us and a bit of your knowledge and background and psychology and all the rest of it. And I guess the only tough question I'd ask you is, With your hockey background growing up in southern Alberta and now being in the north, are you like a Flames fan or an Oilers fan?
Still a Flames fan through and through, and that's when I still get flack from the little goalies I teach up here, and also my girlfriend. She's like, "You're in Oilers country. You need to be an Oilers fan." And I've always said, I'll never cheer against the Oilers, but I can't cheer for them.
There you go. That's a good way to look at it. Sort of good philosophy for life.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing your story and some time with us today.
Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate the time.
We hope to inspire people to reconnect with nature and appreciate where your food comes from by harvesting your own. For more information on getting started or to learn specifics about the Field to Fork experience, visit harvestyourown.ca and follow on Facebook and Instagram. Check back often for new material, recipes, and videos that are posted regularly. Please subscribe to Harvest Your Own podcast and take the time to rate and review the show to help us build a dedicated core of passionate hunters as our regular audience. Until next time, embrace the outdoors and all it has to offer. Thanks for joining us.